Hello and welcome to this video. In this video we create a new Sapper project. Sapper is powered by Svelte, and in this project we want to add the Firebase-Ui authentication to our project. So first we need to install a new or create a new project. For this we copy this line here in our console, and then this downloads the template to our computer. Then we type npm-i to install the dependencies on our local machine, so we need just to wait a little bit, and then when this is finished we just can type npm run dev to run our development server. When this works, it listens on port 3000, and we can just copy this URL, go to our browser and just see if this works. As you can see, this is a great success, so it works. Now I want to add a login button here under the great success text. For this I go into my console, I go into source, and here into routes, and here is my index. So here is my great success text, and under this I want to add a login component where the user can log in or log out or whatever. So here I wrote the login, but I need to create a new component because else I have this error because login is not defined. So I go into components, create a new data or file, and I call it login.svelte. Hello, login.svelte, and here I just create a button for the moment where I type login. Okay, and then in my index here I just import this. So I create a new script tag, and here I write the import login from, and this comes now from my components login.svelte. Okay, like this. So now I imported it here, and here it is, and in the browser you can see here is my login button. But because I want to use my user in the project everywhere, I wanted to create a new store. So I go into source, create a new folder, stores, and here I create a new file. I call it user.js, and here I create a new user store from Svelte. So to do this I type import writable, I hope it's like this, no idea, from my Svelte store. I just click on it to test if it's like this. Yes, this is my writable, and now I just need to export a const current user, and this will be a new writable with null because the user is logged out by default. So I just save this. Okay, and then in my index file I also import my store. So import the current user from my stores user.js, and then here when there is a current user, if current user, I just want to show the name of this user. So for the moment I write current user, and when there is no current user, or maybe I just write nothing, so I make just if. So now when there is a current user I show the name, or I show for the moment the current user here. So I save this, and as you can see there is nothing because there is no current user. Okay, now I want to set my current user when somebody clicks on the login button. For this I need to import also in my login button the current user store, so I copy this line here, but I need to add a script tag. Oops. And then I copy my import here, and then I just want to create a new function login, and when I click on this function, so when we click on the login button, we just want to execute we want to execute a new function, and this is our login function. Okay, and now my UI has some problems. Okay, so when I click on login, I execute the function login, and this is here. And then for the moment, for testing, I just set my current user to an object where I make a name is Borat for the moment. So I click save, and then I test if this will work. I go into my browser, I click on login, and you can see great success current user. But my current user is normally Borat, so I go back into my IDE, and here I just need to check, yes, this is a string, but not a variable from JavaScript. So I just need to add this, and I also need to reference to the name. I save this and I go back, and you can see it does not work. So I click on login, but yes, hey, it worked. So this is because the state is not stored like in Flutter. Okay, but now when I go to about, I go to home, and you see Borat is always there. It's a very great. I'm happy with this. Okay, so just to explain what we did here. So we used this $ current user, and this $ subscribed to our user store here, and when this user store changes, this if statement will run again. Okay, so now we can go to the Firebase-Ui project, or we will replace our existing login button here with Firebase-Ui button. So for this we need to create a new Firebase project. To do this we go to console.firebase.google.com, and then we can click here to a new project and add a new project name. We need to accept this and this. Click on create project, and that's it. So in this case I created already a project, so I go into this project, and then the first time when you open the dashboard you will see something like this, and then you can click on this web icon here, and you need to give a name, Sapper Auth. In my case I click on register app, and then they will show me some HTML code, and now I can just copy this code. And then I go into my project, into my template file, and then over the Sapper script here I will paste this code here. Okay, so this is my Firebase configuration, and this is the CDN link to the Firebase version. And now I need to add Firebase authentication also to this project, so I go to the Firebase documentation under Get Started with Firebase web. And then there somewhere you will find this Firebase authentication CDN link. So we copy this link also into our template file here. So we have our Firebase app and we have Firebase authentication. Then we save this file, and then we go back to our browser, and then we just click or we search in Google for Firebase UI web, and then we take the first link. Normally it's a GitHub link, and in this GitHub project we can go to installation, and then we find two other links. We copy these two links, and then we go back to our template file. We paste our script here from Firebase-Ui number 4. Then I cut this link tag here. Whoops. Okay, and then I paste this into my header under the other links. I save this template file, and then I go to my login component. Okay, in my login component, now I want to add my the Firebase-Ui button. So I just go back to the documentation of Firebase-Ui, and then I scroll down, and then I find this example. So I just copy this script tag for the moment. Then I go back to my login button, and here I will replace this login function with something other, because in this case we create a Firebase button, but we create it with a script, and this script will fill in the Firebase button into a div. So I just here go to my project, create a new div, and then I just paste the script from the Firebase documentation here, and then you see that they will use this Firebase Auth container. So I copy this and I name my div like this. So okay, and then we need to remove some things, because I only want to use Google Auth provider, so I can remove the other, but you can keep it also if you want. So I remove this sign-in success URL, I remove the other terms of service, privacy, blah 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 blah. Okay, like this. Okay, this is great. Now I just want to rename this function into createLoginButton. Okay, and then I just need to call this function when my project mounts. So I need to import onMount from Svelte, because this is only client-side code, so I can use onMount, and then I will execute this function here like this. So now when my component mounts, so this login button, this will call this create function, and this create function will call this Firebase function, and this Firebase function will add the login button here into this div normally. So I save this, and then I go into Chrome, I click where it is, my project here. As you can see, my button is now here. So when I click on this button, I see the identity provider configuration is disabled, so this is not so good. I go into my Firebase project, and then I click here continue to console. Then I go into development authentication, and here into my methods, and then here I go to Google. I click on activate, and then I save this. So now Google is activated here. And then I go back into my project, I reload my project here, click on sign in with Google, and then I can choose my account, and then I see great success, but here I see no redirect URL has been found, blah 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 blah. Okay, so this is because here in our code we did not specify a redirect URL. And this is not so cool. But when you read the documentation, you will find that somewhere there is a callback, and in this callback there is something like this. So you can copy paste it from the documentation, sign in success with auth result. So I pasted this now here. When you look into the documentation here, it's somewhere here. URL after success ran in, blah 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 blah. So when sign in, okay, whatever, you can read this here. Okay, so now I go back into my project on Chrome, reload my page, Then I click on sign in with Google. I choose my project or my account, and then you see great success and there is no error in my console, and you see that the button disappeared. So, but now we need to tell to the store that we are logged in or logged out. So I don't know if this is really the best way to do it, but because the layout is everywhere on every page, I decided to make my event observer into the layout. So just another little thing, as you can see here, I just switched to another page and then I came back, and here you see this error that I have already an instance of key default. So now I just need to make a little trick to avoid this error. So I go to my code and then I go to where I go, maybe here in my login component. And so every time when this component is loaded, we call this where it is here, this new Firebase instance, and instead we need to change this a little bit. So I just paste the line that we need here. So this uses the existing instance if there is an existing instance, and if there is no existing instance, we just run the other script. So we create a new instance, and then for the next time when this component will re-render, we just use the existent instance. Okay, so now I save this, I go back to my browser, and as you can see now, I can click here and there is no error again. Okay, so but now you see that here when I reload my page, I can see again my login button, so I have no idea if I'm logged in or not. So I need to add an observer to my page that tells me if I'm logged in or not. To do this, I go to the documentation under authentication web get started, and here you will find this line here, and this is an observer that observes the state of my authentication. So I copy this code here, then I could paste this code here into the layout, but it's not really a layout thing to observe my user, so I create a new component that I call user observer.svelte, and then in this component I create a new script tag. There I post this Firebase state observer, but I need to import my onMount from Svelte, because I only want to do this when this is mounted, and then I cut this code here. Oops. Like this. So now when this component is mounted, we start our listener, and for a moment we could make something like console.log user, and then we show our user here, or we could do console log just this message here, like user is signed out. Okay, I save this, and then I go into my layout. Maybe this is not the best practice, but for the moment I do it like this. So here I add my user observer, OK, and then I just add my observer here, and I save this, and then I go to my home page and I click reload, and now you can see here is my user object from Firebase, and now it would be a good idea to set this user into the state. So I go back to my editor, into my user observer. So here, when the user is logged in, I need to set this user to the state. To do this, I just need to import my user. So where I have it here, I can copy this line and paste it here. And now here, I can just call currentUser set and set my current user to user. And when I'm signed out, I can just use currentUser set, oops, where it is, copy, currentUser set to null. So when the user is logged out, my current user will be null. So now I can save this, and here I have the display name from the user. This is Firebase specific. So I go into my index page, and here before here was our hard-coded object where we used name. So now we need to use display name, because this is now our Firebase user object, and in Firebase the username is called, or not the username, but the name of the user is called display name. So I save this, and then I go into my browser, and in this case my display name is sveltecasts. So as you can see here, this works. Now I click to go to another page, and I go back, and my name is always here. But as you can see, the sign in with Google button is always here. And when I'm logged in, I want to show a logout button, and when I'm logged out, I want to show a login button. So to do this, I go into my login component here, and here I can create just a simple if condition. I use if, oops, current user. So if there is a current user, we want to show a button, logout, and when we click on this button, we want to execute a function logout, or maybe sign out, because Firebase has also a function called sign out somewhere. It's somewhere in the documentation. I have no idea where it is, but we will find it, maybe. Here it is. So when we want to sign out, we need to call Firebase Auth sign out. So here I create a new function sign out, and when we call this function, we just
call this on Firebase.
So when there is an error, I just make an alert. And else, when we click on sign out, we don't need to do anything here, because our observer will change the state for the user. So for the moment, maybe I can just write console log logged out. I save this, and here for my if condition, if current user, so we choose the logout button, and if there is no current user, we show our container. So I delete, I make this into one line, and then I save this like this. Then I go into my project here, and now I reload the page, and here you see that I'm logged in, and here is my logout button. So I click on logout, and now you see this message: user is is signed out. And when the user is signed out, we want to show again the sign in button here. So we go to our login component, and then we need to call after this logout event our function createLoginButton. So I will paste this here. So now when the user is signed out, we normally get this div here again, because the current user is null, and then we have a false event, so we have this else, and here normally this div here is in our browser again, and we can call this createLoginButton. So I save this, and then I go into my browser, and now I click on my sign in link, then I click on my account, then I'm logged in again. Here is my name, Sveltecast. I click on logout, and I get this error message, but you don't see it in the video, so I need to copy it here. So I will copy it into my console, or into, yes, I write it into my console so you can see it. This is my error message: could not find Firebase-Ui widget element on the page. And this is because Svelte does not update the DOM on every change, but to be a little bit more performant, they make some micro tasks or something like this. So now we need to use a little trick, and this trick is called tick. So we can go to Svelte tick, oops, not tick, but tick, and as you can see here, this does not work. So I go to Svelte dev docs, and then I search for tick. If you need more information about the tick event, no, where it is here, just go to examples and search for tick. To get the trick, you can read this. There is a good explanation also on the tutorial, but we need to import tick from Svelte. To do this, we go into our project and import this here, and now we add this tick here, and tick, in this case they use it with await, so normally I can use also an async function here, async function, and then I also await for my tick. So after this tick will just be executed when my DOM is re-rendered. So now I save this, and I go to my project, and I click on sign in again. So I'm logged in now. Now I click on my Logout button, and now I see my sign in with Google button again. So now this is finished for the moment. I have a sign in button that works. I have an user listener that set my state when the user is logged in or logged out, and when I'm logged out I will re-render my login button again. So now I could add this button, for example, in my navigation or everywhere on my project. So thank you for watching. I hope you like this video.